Hello, today I'm going to talk about a little local history project I've been doing, and we're going to look for some lost gold, both through the research and by actually physically going out to look for it. We're going to be talking about the legend of the Lost Springer Gold Mine, otherwise known as a dead man's claim. So the legend goes, back in the early 1870s in Deer Lodge, Montana, there lived an old-timey prospector named Tom Springer. Now, Springer has been described as everything from a silly, down-on-his-luck drunk to a quiet, crafty, and mysterious man. But legend has it that Springer had found the literal mother lode, a rich vein of gold that would make any prospector blush. He was supposedly the only one who knew about this otherwise impossible-to-find claim was. So after enjoying some of the profits of this gold vein, or perhaps after sending some money back to his family in Illinois, or maybe because he simply thought his heart problems were soon to catch up with him, he decided to share his secret with two worthy young men named John Stearns and John Hildreth. So the trio took off up Cottonwood Creek towards the mine. It was quite the trek, so when they went to break for the evening, Springer had set off to shoot some grouse for dinner. When he didn't return to camp, a search party had been sent out to find him, which they did a few days later, where he had died of a heart attack, a rifle still on his shoulder, and the knowledge of the gold mine died with him. So some versions of this legend also say that his final trek just never happened. He was just found dead by his cabin one day. Some versions also say that he was only found because a coyote howl marked his location, which is a very romantic sort of notion. It was said that in the mouth of the mine, he left a bag and his pickaxe that marked the location. Anyway, his death, and especially the idea of a lost gold mine, had turned into legend, with folks for decades, and now centuries after, searching Cottonwood Hills outside Deer Lodge, looking for any trace of this lost gold. The most likely location is thought to be up Beggs Creek, the North Fork of the Cottonwood Creek, about a mile or two. However, some sources claim that it was in the Emery Mining District, or located southeast of Deer Lodge, some 15 or 20 miles. A few people have dubiously claimed to have found it, but they likely use this idea for the basis for some swindling. I don't really buy it. Now, I first came to hear about Springer when I Googled lost treasures in Montana, and I found a few small mentions in a forum post. From there, I started digging into it more. I looked on the Library of Congress and the Montana newspaper's online archives, and I found a handful of articles. It was interesting because the first few articles I found, I just happened to stumble upon thanks to looking out on some search terms and some legible archives that were searchable. And then half the time I would find an article, it would mention another article, so I'd have to search for that source a lot more specifically. So this hunt led me to calling local libraries around Montana for them to search their archives for an article on a specific day. I also scoured the internet for the story, and I found that it was mentioned in a few Western magazines, eventually finding this 1964 issue of Frontier Times on eBay, actually. And I came across a few books with the local legend in it, like Gene Moore's 1950s Treasure State Treasure Tales, which I found in the basement stacks of the MSU library, which I was surprised that they had. So I found about 16 sources total, 11 newspaper articles, 1 journal, 2 magazines, and 2 mentions in book chapters. In the description below, I'll link to as many sources as possible, which I'll include any transcripts of the articles that I transcribed. So through this trail of sources that I followed, I was eventually able to find the date of the original newspaper, which mentions the actual date of Springer's death, which is August 25th, 1872. I also made another interesting discovery, that Springer's actual name was Tom Spring, not Springer. Which explains why I was having such a difficult time finding the original article announcing his death, but also why I was having trouble finding the census and death records, because I just didn't have the right name, despite all of the legends calling him Springer, which must have been either a nickname or like an evolution of the name throughout this legend. So it's funny to see how this story changes and evolves as it develops. You can actually see where a source would introduce a new detail, and how that detail would be quoted and used in subsequent sources, often used verbatim. It's super interesting to look at it like you can see the evolution of a Western legend and how all the details quickly get muddled. The Helena Weekly Herald from September 5th, 1872, which is like a week after he died, says that Spring left with J. Stearns and Major Elwell up on his final trip up the mountain. But the original article says it was John Stearns and John Hildreth. So is Major Elwell and John Hildreth the same person, or did the details already get messed up just like a week after his death? Who knows? Anyways, with the original article, I was able to confirm that Spring indeed was a real man who died of a heart attack on a mountain, and it kind of explained the circumstances of his death, who he was with, how he was found, all of that. So now we have confirmation that Spring died while traveling with his two companions up Cottonwood Creek. While I can't verify for sure the part about the legend about the gold mine, we at least have amassed as much information as possible for this treasure hunt. So let's go hunting.
Mike and I took off on this treasure hunt towards Deer Lodge in late September 2021, and we made a day of it, exploring Deer Lodge some, visiting the cemetery, before heading off towards where Springer's lost lode might be.
So Mike and I just got to Deer Lodge. We're taking a little break in Arrowstone Park just off the highway, which is a nice little walking path along the Clark Fork River. We are just hanging out on the fishing pier here. Just taking a break, watching all the fish rise to eat bugs. Might go fishing later, who knows. There seems to be a logging company that stores on the other side because there are a lot of logs over there. It's a really lovely day out, probably one of the last nice days before winter starts to come. So I'm really glad we're out here today. Come on.
We also explored Deer Lodge. It had a ton of museums, but we didn't go since Leica was with me. It had a big Old West theme around here. Of course, there's the historic Deer Lodge prison. I once did a haunted tour there that started at midnight, and it was spooky and awesome, and they told all the ghost stories that have happened there. From the official records I found, I knew that Springer was buried in the Hillcrest Cemetery in the International Order of the Odd Fellows section, so we went for a visit to pay our respects. I had the memorial idea, but didn't know how to narrow it down that specifically.
I brought along some golden sunflowers because I thought that would be appropriate. If we can find old Springer's grave, we will leave them there to rest, and if we can't, we will just leave them for somebody else to enjoy. According to a map I found online, the International Order of the Odd Fellows section is right next to the Old Masonic section, so I will start looking here. This is the section of the cemetery that's for the International Order of the Odd Fellows, so he should theoretically be somewhere around here.
I didn't manage to locate his headstone, so I left his flowers with someone else. We took off to the hills towards Cottonwood Creeks and Beggs Creeks. We had to pass through private land to get towards the National Forest land.
So, according to my gazetteer, I believe we're on this road here, and you can see Cottonwood Creek here, Beggs Creek there. It was mostly through just prairie and farmland, very flat here on the left side, and you can start to see some hills. We stopped in the shade of some trees to eat some lunch, but right here is the first time where the road meets the creek, and you can barely see it, but it is very idyllic. So I'm going to drive up a little further to see if I can get access to the creek at all. I have my GPS to make sure I'm not trespassing or anything. Traffic out here is a little rough. Just joking, there's just cows everywhere.
You can see Deer Lodge here in the distance. Once I got to public land, the road got really bumpy for a while.
So I made it to the end of the Forest Service road. It leads to this power line thing that's making some creepy noises and a trailhead. So I don't know what the trail is going to be like. If it's too rough, I might not make it all the way to the creek, but we will go a little ways and find out. So we are near the start of the trail. It's not so bad so far. A little bumpy,
lots of trees. So this might be Itty Bitty Bags Creek. I will keep looking though, just to make sure. But this is sort of where the area, the lost gold mine would be. So we'll keep an eye out for it. So I can hear Bags Creek pretty clearly down there, which means these are the hills that the lost gold mine should be in. We're about a couple miles up from the fork from Cottonwood Creek. I'm going to see if I can get all the way down there, but I just wanted to show you what the scenery looked like here. This trail that we're on seems to be a mountain bike trail. There's a lot of mountain bike prints in it, and it's very soft. So this here is Bags Creek. I made it just off of the trail, where the trail meets the creek, like it's getting a little drink here. So finding Bags Creek was kind of my goal for today. I just kind of wanted to check out what the creek looked like, what the terrain and trees and hills look like, where the lost mine might be. So Rosemary's joining us on this adventure. She's about 6 months along, 22 weeks. And she's the reason this project has been delayed so much, and why it has been pared back a little bit, because I was quite sick for a while with her. But it's nice that we're out here now, together, seeing the sights and looking for lost gold. I just thought this was a really pretty little beaver dam here. Nice, cool looking water. Oh, I think I see some little tiny fish schooled up over there. Looks like some little brookies. If I had my 3 weight on me, I would try to catch some. Looks like I might try and go for it. How lovely. Where are you going? There's an old tractor body or something up there in the hills.
So we didn't find the gold, but we did have a fun and memorable adventure together. Of course, I had to stop at Pork Chop John's before getting home. It's always a good way to end any adventure.